Hey guys, welcome back to Bryan's Mysteries and Adventures on Trail. And today's case is a combination of both being inspirational, devastating. It is one of the most inspirational stories I've ever heard of. These two friends that were friends for years, they were mountaineers, and they were friends for over 4 years. They had met in 1996 while they were both attending graduate student college in the Colorado State University. Jim was earning a master's degree in geology, and Mike was learning his in English. Mike had actually grown up in Colorado and was a very experienced mountain climber. He taught college students to learn to climb through the Outward Bound program. And today's video is going to be about Mike Price and Jim Davidson. And it was always a dream of Jim and Mike to climb Mount Everest. But on this particular day, on June 21st of 1992, after 3 days of climbing rope together, they reached the 14,400 foot summit. They took pictures, and as they were heading back down, they crossed a glacier at about 1,500 feet of elevation, just roughly an hour from where their car was parked. And unfortunately, the snow just collapsed under Jim, and he fell into a crevasse, a large crack in the glacier. Now, Mike, 50 feet back, was attached to the safety rope, and he was trying to dig in to try and prevent Jim's fall, but he too, unfortunately, was pulled into the crevasse. Unfortunately, they both fell 80 feet and landed on a 2-foot by 7-foot ledge, and it was because Mike had actually slowed down Jim's descent into the crevasse that he survived, and unfortunately Mike died within minutes. And after they had fallen, there was an avalanche. You can imagine falling 80 feet and then having a whole bunch of snow cover you. And Jim managed to dig himself out, and he tried to revive Mike, but it was in vain. He knew that he had passed, and he was now sitting there knowing he was in this 80-foot crevasse. He had just lost his best friend, and he was thinking, how am I going to get out of this? And his willpower, his motivation, and the way that he used Mike's training and teaching, and he kept Mike with him this whole time, was just amazing. I mean, he is just an amazing man, and we're going to talk about it more. Jim is quoted in saying, "I don't want to go, Mike." Davidson said in his mind as he knelt next to Mike, "I'm not supposed to go. I'm supposed to stay with you. We're partners and we stick together. But you're gone now, and I'm the only one left. I'm going to keep living. I've got to get out of here. That means I have to leave you. I'm sorry. I don't want to leave you, but I've got to. And if I'm going to get us found, I've got to get myself out of here. But that means I've got to go, and I can't take you with me. So you're going to have to stay here for now." End quote. And this was all around 10:30 a.m. and he knew that he had to make it out of this crevasse before sunset, because he knew if he didn't, he would freeze to death with the temperatures falling below well before what any human could survive. Plus, he had lost a bunch of his gear, but thankfully he was able to find one of Mike's ice axe and Mike's helmet, and he realized that he needed to get out. He needed to be able to get out so that he could bring Mike back to his family and survive this ordeal. But he himself was injured, and he is down in this terrible crevasse looking up into the darkness. And he said that looking at this climb, he said that nobody could do that climb. It's an impossible climb, but yet he knew he had to do it. According to Jim's recount, it was an 80-foot high ice wall climb, which is apparently one of the most difficult challenges. Even with the best climbing condition and the best gear, the ice wall started leaning in towards Jim, got about 30 to 40 feet, which he said made it even more difficult for climbing. Every step was getting harder and harder, but he knew that he had to get up there before the sunset. But unfortunately, as the day was progressing and it was getting warmer, it was actually hurting him because there were chunks of falling ice on top of him. He said that some of them were sizes of baseball, some of them were sizes even bigger, and there was constant streams of water. He was completely soaked. I mean, I just can't imagine what this man went through, but he just kept on persevering. And he said that in a way he could still hear Mike coaching him, and I just thought that was so touching. It was amazing. He had kept the rope attached to him, and he kept telling himself that they were in this together and that he would get them both out. And he hadn't eaten anything. He hadn't had anything to drink. He was already exhausted from this alpine adventure that they had done before he had fallen into the crevasse. And at one point, he suffered another fall, and it was only one ice screw that actually held him to the side of the mountain. And at that point, he realized he had to switch to a type of climbing called aid climbing. Now, I don't know a lot about climbing it. Apparently, that means where you use ice screws and then make foot loops, and apparently it's a very dangerous and a very difficult, hard, technical way of climbing. And Jim himself said that he had never heard of anybody doing it. He had only remembered Mike giving him certain pointers on it, but he knew that it was going to be very difficult and very dangerous, especially considering the situation he was already in. But at this point, he knew that it was his only way out because of the way the walls were leaning in against him. Apparently, not only is it technically difficult, but it's very, very tough on the body. It's a very, very difficult way to climb. And Jim knew this, but he knew that it was his only chance, and he just kept on persevering. You have to remember, he didn't have the proper gear. He had lost most of his gear. Apparently, he only had a few strips of nylon and a few ice screws. Of course, he had his crampons and his ice axe, but he was very limited in what his supplies were. So this was going to be very challenging, and he knew that. And he just kept telling himself, he's got to get out. He's got to get out. Remember, when you don't have a climbing partner, that means that you have to keep climbing back down to retrieve your ice screws or whatever climbing gear that is. And that takes a lot of time. And he was up against a race against the clock because he knew once the sun set, he was going to be in serious trouble. It took him hours and hours of grueling climbing just to get to the lip. But that's one of the hardest challenges once you get to the top. To be able to get over that lip, you have to be able to reach it and then be able to pull yourself up over it. What I think is so beautiful about this story is that Jim recounts he could hear his buddy Mike giving him solace, giving him information, telling him what to do. And at one point, Jim thought he was going to fall all the way back down, and he knew that how could it end like this? And so he just decided to lunge up and dig his ice axe in, and he managed to get over the lip, and he was out, and he just laid there, and he was just amazed that he was alive. He finally cut the rope from Mike, and he knew that he had done his best friend the service, and he started yelling out, and there were park rangers and people in the area that came, and they saved Jim. They couldn't believe the harrowing tale and what Jim had gone through. And because of Jim's efforts, they were able to go back the next day and rescue Mike from the crevasse, and they were able to get him out of the crevasse and transport him back home to his family so that he could be laid to rest and given a proper burial. And that wouldn't have happened without Jim's perseverance. And Jim Davidson is just an absolutely remarkable person, a person that just is inspirational and gives you the willingness to always stay hopeful, never lose hope. He wrote a book called The Ledge, which I highly recommend anyone check out. It's an absolutely wonderful book. It talks about friendship and love and support and never giving up. And I think that's one of the most important things that we have to remember, especially when we're out doing outdoor adventures, hiking, doing things that can be dangerous. Sometimes if we get ourselves into a situation, we can't lose hope. We always have to remember to keep moving on. And that can be the difference between life and death. And that's one of the things that I think Jim Davidson has taught a lot of people. Not only that, it didn't give him a reason to stop hiking or mountaineering. He keeps mountaineering. He goes around, he talks to people, he teaches people about safety. He's always carrying on his friend Mike's message, and Mike was always teaching people about mountaineering and the safety, and he attributes his own life to Mike, because if it hadn't been for Mike, he says that he probably wouldn't have survived. And I just think that's a beautiful thing, and it's a tragedy that Mike didn't survive, but I'm glad that Jim did survive, and he's able to tell his story and be inspirational to others. I want to dedicate this video to Mike Price and Jim Davidson, two of the most amazing people, and even through death they've remained great friends, and Jim still learns from his friend Mike. I want to thank everybody for watching as always, and I hope everyone is having a good week, and I will see everybody in the next one. Special thank you to co.ag for providing the background music, and like I said, definitely check them out if you've never checked out their channel. For those of you that have ordered calendars, the shipment should be in next week, and any of you that have placed orders, I will get your calendars out as soon as they come in. And thank you so much for all your orders and all your support. And I know that we're coming into hiking season, so I'm going to start giving some tips and safety advice towards the end of the videos, because I know a lot of people don't want to listen till the end, but one of the biggest things is always tell at least 2 people that are living in different residences your plan. Carry an emergency blanket, carry an extra amount of food, leave a certain amount of time, give yourself extra time, bring a puffy jacket no matter how long you plan on being out there, and I highly recommend getting a sat phone or Garmin device of some kind. And one more thing I wanted to mention, you guys are free to say whatever you want in the comments. I'm all about constructive feedback, and I'm always willing to listen, but as long as it's done in a polite way. Some people have this way of attacking me for things they don't even know. Somebody said, oh yeah, Mr. Politis has cornered this market, so get a job. I have a full-time job. I'm the director of new business development for an international engineering company. I live in a 600-foot square apartment and drive a 9-year-old car and donate most of my extra money to charities and to help find missing people. So I just think that people need to take a look at themselves before they judge others, because when you judge others, you don't define them, you define yourself. And I think a lot of people also miss the fact that YouTube, the first word is you. It's about people doing their videos the way they want to do them. If everyone made the same kind of videos, what would be the point of that? So I just ask that people be respectful of that. And honestly, I've had families contact me because they were upset with certain comments that people had made because they were derogatory, and they thought that I should take action against them. And to me, I'll never do that, but just please be respectful. 99.9% of you are absolutely wonderful, and I appreciate all your feedback, and I look forward to all your comments. And last but not least, happy Mardi Gras to everybody. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.